Summertime rendering is an anime that you see people barely talk about, and the reason being is something that is very quite common, and it's because of how poorly managed it was. And this is because Disney had the rights to this series, and instead of airing every new episode weekly like it did when it was airing during its anime season, they instead decided to wait until the entire series was completed, and then they decided to put it on their streaming site. This of course led to not many people knowing about this series' existence, and of course led to people not even talking about it at all, which is a real shame because this series did a good job mixing mystery and horror, and how the series makes you wonder what's going to happen next. What makes Summertime Rendering dark isn't just simply them showing blood or a lot of very gross scenes. No, I think what truly makes this series the more dark is just really what our characters have to go through in order to solve the mysteries of what's truly going on around them. A story in which involves our character Shinpei going back to his hometown to attend the funeral of an old friend that he used to be with on a daily basis. However, once he gets there, he starts to notice very strange things, but he also comes to the realization that his old friend that passed away, this being a girl named Ushio, may have not died by accident, and in fact, she may have been killed by somebody or something. And it seems that there are a few people in this hometown that truly know what is going on. Or to be more specific, these are people that look like humans, but in reality they are not. You see, we come to find out very quickly that these humans or these people aren't actually humans or people. They're actually shadows that killed the original person and then take their identity in order to make them seem like they're just your average person that you see outside. But that is far from the case, and sadly Shinpei will have to learn this the hard way. But Shinpei also at the same time finds out that he isn't an average human being neither. You see, he comes to find out that he too has powers as well, and this power is going back in time. However, the only way this power is activated is when he's about to die, and that's pretty much his entire power. That's the only benefit he has when he has this kind of power, is that he's able to go back to time. And this of course leads to Shinpei now going back in time every time he dies, to not only prevent the tragedies that are about to happen, but to also figure out what is truly going on in his hometown. What are these things called shadows? What is their main goal? And most importantly, how was he able to get these powers, and what really happened to Ushio, and if the shadows had something to do with the passing of his old friend. These are mysteries that Shinpei wants to solve very quickly, but also at the same time he realizes that he can't do it alone, which is why characters like Hizuru play an important role in the story, as they know more about shadows than Shinpei does, and it seems that they have a history with shadows that nobody else has. But because this person is very knowledgeable about shadows, of course they become a target for the shadows to make sure that nobody truly knows what is actually going on. And I think that's really what the horror aspect really shines in a lot. The fact that these characters have to keep an eye on everywhere they go and any person they interact with, because like I mentioned earlier, these shadows can mimic people, and it's very clear that unless you know a lot about shadows, you won't be able to tell the difference between a human being and a shadow. But this wouldn't be the only horror aspect that makes this series truly dark, is what Shinpei has to go through in order to solve these mysteries. Shinpei's powers don't activate very quickly, they only activate when he's about to die, and that is something that no one really should have to deal with. The way Shinpei has to always experience death just to activate his powers can be something that is mentally damaging to somebody's mind. Having to have your life being taken away right in front of your eyes is not something that people can just simply accept. It's something that can really mess you up, and it's something that is very hard to forget. Not only that, but Shinpei also has people he cares about and that he deeply loves that sometimes die right in front of his eyes, and there's nothing he can do about it because he only has the powers to go back in time. And of course that is something that's not very helpful when you're seeing somebody you deeply care about being killed by something that you still don't truly know what it actually is and where it came from. And that's the cycle that Shinpei has to go all throughout the entire series. He has to uncover these mysteries, but also at the same time watch out he is not attacked by these shadows, and when he dies he has to remember every little detail in order to prevent that event from happening ever again. And that's what really makes this series all the more intense, as you pretty much have to listen and remember every single thing that happens in this series, because it will be brought up again in the near future. Every conversation, every moment between characters, every interaction that Shinpei has with any other character in the island is something that is worth mentioning and worth remembering, because it's probably going to play a huge role in the upcoming battles that Shinpei and his group have to go through with these shadows. Not only that, but the series does a good job of making this whole thing very unpredictable. You truly don't know what's going to happen next, and you truly don't know which characters are going to live to see another day. Not to mention that at any given moment, the series can go from bright and very colorful scenery to a very dark and grim atmosphere in which you see really just how intense things are getting. We can have moments in which characters are just simply talking and are trying to figure out what's going on, to then next thing you know, shadows attacking them, and one by one them being taken down by these shadows, and sadly Shinpei having to restart everything once again and hoping that his next actions make a different outcome or have these events change drastically. But just because Shinpei is able to go back in time, that doesn't mean that he's always going to be 100% safe, as some of these shadows are much more smarter than they seem to be. These shadows know very well that Shinpei has the ability to go back in time, so they make sure that no matter what, no matter how many times Shinpei goes back in time and tries to solve the entire problem, as long as the outcome is the same, in which the shadows always win and Shinpei is defeated, they are determined to keep it that way no matter what. And it creates this very grim atmosphere, as some of the characters, including Shinpei, don't really truly know how this whole situation is going to be in their favor. No matter how many times they try to fix it, it seems that the outcome is always the same, and it seems that the shadows are always one step ahead. This creates panic and uncertainty whether or not they are truly ever going to be able to defeat the shadows, and if the choices they have made are truly the right ones. But no matter what happens, Shinpei isn't going to give up that easily. He still tries to keep going forward despite the circumstance that he is in. Despite him being traumatized of the events that happened to him and the people he cares about, he realized that he's the only one person that can do something to create a change. He realized that he's probably the only person who has the abilities and power to defeat these shadows once and for all. And speaking of shadows, the series also does a good job in giving us a lot more information about these shadows, who truly are the villains in this series. We know firsthand that not all shadows are bad people, as we come to find out early on in this series that Ushio, despite her technically not being alive, her shadow still exists, and this shadow decides to help out Shinpei and his group to defeating the shadows, because it would be revealed that Ushio's death wasn't an accident, and in fact she was killed by a shadow. So because that, Ushio's shadow is determined to get rid of these shadows so that no innocent person can get hurt by them ever again. Despite her being a shadow, she still has the personalities that are very similar to the original Ushio, something that Shinpei states very quickly. But of course, this isn't the only memorable character, as Summertime Rendering did a good job of creating a cast of characters that are very important to not just the story but for the characters around them. Their interactions, but as well as their personalities, is what makes them as a group all the more interesting to see and heartbreaking at the same time when you see their lives being taken by these shadows. It's why really Summertime Rendering did a good job with its cast of characters, because every character is important in its own way. Sure, some characters are more important than others. Sure, there's more character development in some characters than other characters, but each character has a thing that makes them all the more memorable and you don't mind seeing from time to time. Like for example with Hizuru. Remember how I said earlier that Hizuru seemed to have known more about shadows than the other people in the group? Well, that's because Hizuru has a past which involves having had a relationship with a shadow that goes by the name of Hein, who is considered to be the mother of shadows. This of course leads to a flashback in which we come to find out that Hizuru and this mother of shadows used to have a very interesting relationship between human and shadows, in which it seemed at first that everything was going completely fine. That is until Hein killed Hizuru's brother, and as a result that, Hein went completely insane, as this was something that this shadow has never done before. This shadow never took someone's life, but in this moment we see how Hein was overwhelmed by the fact that she took a person's life, and because this made Hein become more twisted. But just by me saying this, you probably think that Hein was the ultimate villain in this series. However, this series once again just showed us just how unexpected it truly is, as it turns out that Hein wouldn't be the ultimate villain of this series. In fact, it will be another shadow that goes by the name of Shide, who was Hein's right hand man. But it seems that while initially his goal was to revive Hein once again, it seems that that goal didn't really matter to him anymore once he realized that Hein wasn't no use for him anymore, since he has gotten so powerful to the point where he felt that nobody can truly defeat him. And once he takes care of Shinpei and Ushio, then he'll be able to achieve his ultimate wish, in which this wish was just simply to be able to stay alive. However, if there were going to be people interrupting him and people who wanted to end end his life, then he might as well end the world as well. But of course his plans will ultimately fail once Shinpei Ushio were able to successfully defeat him. But even with his defeat, Shinpei realized that this wouldn't be the end of it. Shadows will still be existing, and he realized that even if Shide was defeated right then and there, that still wouldn't technically solve the entire problem. So Shinpei decides to go all the way back in time to prevent from shadows even existing in the first place. Now, you would think that because this series was very dark and very terrifying, you would think the ending would not be so great. You would think that this would just be a typical series in which they either have a very bittersweet ending or just not a great happy ending at all. But Summertime Rendering did the complete opposite, and in fact, because they were able to change time completely and because shadows were no longer a thing, it pretty much made things go back to normal. Not only did Shinpei and his group manage to survive this entire ordeal, but the real Ushio is no longer dead. Ushio is alive and well, and it seems that now Shinpei is truly happy because the person that he deeply cared for is now back and he could be able to see them once again. It seems that all the pain and suffering that Shinpei went through really paid off, as he truly was able to not only save himself or the people around him, but he was able to save a lot of people from having to suffer a very unfortunate end. And that is how Summertime Rendering ends, a story about a character having to witness a lot of terrible events happening right in front of his eyes, all to defeat certain things that many people would see as impossible to defeat. But Shinpei and his group were able to show that it was possible to defeat any kinds of evil, no matter if it seemed outrageous. Summertime Rendering is one of those series that I really wish people talked about more often, because it was a really great series from beginning to the end. And it's not surprising that many people who were big fans of Re:Zero came to actually watch this series because of just how very similar both the stories are. The only difference being of the genre, where Re:Zero is an isekai, whereas Summertime Rendering is more of a mystery, supernatural kind of series. But other than that, if you are huge fans of Re:Zero, then I highly recommend you watch this series if you have the time for it. And that's where I'm going to end today's video. I hope you enjoyed it, and I'll see you next time.